270 names of people who gave, and that's people who gave $10 or more for this production. And it seems remarkable to me that that many people cared enough to put up their money in. So what I'm going to do is we'll actually chat for a while. We'll keep things pretty informal. I'm Travis, so I'm the inspector, obviously, and I produced the series and co-wrote it with Eric, who is my writing partner, and we've been doing web series together for a long time. Eric also plays Boyish the Extraordinary, who is the villain for the show. He appears in part 3 through the remainder of the episodes, and co-wrote the series with me. And I'm also going to introduce Brian Giovanni, who did the music. And come on over. Brian's score for Inspector Spacetime is remarkable, not only because it's the first time where we've done something where there was music throughout the entire video, but also he had a starting point, and we'll talk about this, but if you see the Inspector Spacetime clip on Community, it has a little starting point where you see the very last note of the theme song. And Brian worked backwards from that note to match what they did on Community with our own theme song. So it's very impressive. And then Chaz was a fan, but moved out here from Milwaukee, Chicago, and contacted me and was like, "Hey, do you need?" Or no, wait, yeah, it was a couple years ago. But I'd said I needed help on a project or something, and Chaz contacted me and said, "Hey, I'll help out." So he came on as a PA, and has since worked his way up through our productions, and is now producing on this project. He produced all the behind-the-scenes stuff as well as working as a script supervisor. And now we are actually going to be working, he's going to be producing fully some of the scripted content for our sketch show that we do. So meet Chaz.
Hey. Are these things working?
Not that we need them, you can all hear me. Let's start off and just, I'm going to actually put on a slideshow of pictures. In the meantime, does anybody have any questions?
What Doctor Who, they're fine with this series? There's no copyright infringement?
Actually, the BBC loves us. We've been posted several times on BBC America's website, and they seem to be really all for it. And there are a couple different ways that that studios take a look at fan works. One of them is what happened to Star Trek in the 90s, or The Simpsons, where every website, every fan-produced thing got squashed, right? But the other way is what George Lucas did, or Joss Whedon does with his projects, is where they embrace the fan creations and they recognize it for what it is, which is a brand ambassador, basically someone creating new works in order to promote the things that they love. And I think the BBC is very much in that camp. They recognize all the people doing Doctor Who type things on Tumblr and on whether it's videos or whatever, and they recognize that all that is good for the brand.
Because the reason I ask is I've been involved for years with revising Space 1999, and Jerry Anderson Productions sold their rights to ITV or ITC in America. They squash everything, every attempt.
It's an interesting thing, and there's no way to know why a company does one thing or the other. And the thing about Inspector Spacetime that's weird, because our problem was not with the BBC, because we're clearly a parody of Doctor Who, and parody is covered very well in copyright law. But the problem was when we wanted to do the series to do it, SONY had an issue with it, and so because they produce Community. Community is kind of a weird thing because it's produced by SONY, aired on NBC, made at Paramount, and so it's all it's kind of all over the place. But I certainly I thought it was going to be fine when we were doing the series. There were already fans out there making T-shirts and posters and iPhone cases and making money off of it. And we said very specifically that we weren't going to do this project in order to make a profit. We just wanted to make it. And but they still had. When I got a call from a lawyer and said, "You can't make this web series."
So we basically just had to like remove all of the specific identifying factors of Inspector Spacetime, like which wasn't actually that difficult because we actually wrote this before the first episode of Community had aired. So since I did the bulk of the writing, I didn't know the things that they were going to have in there, so I didn't include references to, for instance, Constable Reggie or the Blorgons or anything like that because I didn't know about them. So we didn't have to remove that stuff. And then in our script, we, in the character heading, we referred to him as Inspector Spacetime, but we never, like, nobody ever called him Inspector Spacetime. Just like in Doctor Who, they don't call him Doctor Who, they call him the Doctor or Doctor. So he was just Inspector or the Inspector. So there weren't any like major changes, hardly any changes at all, actually.
Yeah, and there were some things that, I mean, I was aware of the copyright issues because I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, and so I looked into it. And there are things like you can't copyright a title necessarily. Now there are trademark protections, but they didn't have a trademark on Inspector Spacetime. And Sony has done nothing to promote Inspector Spacetime at all. And they put out one T-shirt, and so we really didn't think we'd have a problem. But the other more important thing was that I was not going to fight with my favorite show. I've loved Community since it's been on the air. So being on it was just a big treat, but it's still a great show. So when they said they had a problem, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to fight with you. I will change the name of the show, and I'll change the look of the character so that it's not the same, look. But that's all we need to change because the web series is completely original. It's all the content on Community was like 15 seconds long. So, but I did say to them, I said, and this was just one lawyer who was working at a. And this is all very behind the scenes, like inner workings of Hollywood here. But I did tell her, I said, look, fans are asking for this, and I would much rather work with you guys on this. But you're not doing it. So if we need to do it, we'll do it. But you have to know that if we change the name and have to tell fans why we changed the name, they're not going to be mad at us for doing it. They're going to be more mad at you guys for making us do it. And sure enough, when we announced the name change, it got like this flurry of press that helped us. Actually, we ended up having people donate more money in solidarity, to the little guy, I guess. So.
And then, so the title of it, Untitled web series about a space traveler who can also travel through time, is sort of a wink at that whole behind-the-scenes stuff.
Because fans know that it's Inspector Spacetime, right? I mean, even websites that were covering the show everyone would say, this is Inspector Spacetime that can't be called Inspector Spacetime. And so I didn't want to call it something else necessarily. Like we could have done Inspector What or, I don't know, any number of things. But the title makes it clear, I think, that it's funny because it's so like awkward, but it's also it makes it clear that it's not what we wanted to call it, I think. So
I think Uwasakat just rolls off the tongue.
Uwasakat, yeah, that's what we're going for. It's the. Does anybody have any questions about the origin of the series or the making of the series? I'm trying to figure out how to do a slideshow on this. I would think that the Mac would have.
We got all the thumbnails there. Just use your imagination. Sequence.
Yeah.
Mix and match.
How many days did it take you to shoot?
We shot. Go ahead.
We had a very long weekend basically, and it was a nonstop 4 days from Friday through Monday, and it was. The reason I remember specifically when it was because it was the weekend that The Avengers was opening, and I work at a movie theater, and so it was kind of a really big deal that I was getting that weekend off because we knew that it was going to be swamped at the theater, but I had planned this, weeks ahead of time, so
Way before The Avengers
yeah.
was scheduled to be released.
Way to go, Joss Whedon, what an inconvenience. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And it was intense. It was weird. Travis and Carrie, who you saw in the first episode, they were working nonstop all 4 days. I actually had a very light first and a half day, but then second half of the second day, and then the last 2 days were very knee heavy. It was a lot. It was a big weekend, but I think we came away with something that looks incredible. So
4 days and a lot of planning.
yeah.
Anybody else?
What about locations? I saw you had kind of a movie set there, or a studio soundstage.
Looks like it, huh?
Yeah.
We actually shot, I do performance at the Acme Comedy Theater down in Hollywood, and so we had offices, and actually you can see this picture here is set in the, we actually shot in the parking lot. And so we had a very small bit and got in trouble a little bit because we had talked to the people who own this parking lot, whose business is right there, and arranged for them to not be there for a day, and then they had forgotten that, and so they had cars there that we had to try to move and get out of the way, but everything worked out, and then we have an office space that we kind of had as our main base for that day. The second day we shot in a, there's a couple episodes where we are in the hallway, like episode 2, we're in this kind of hallway inside after the inspector and Piper get trapped, and they're kind of trapped in this hallway. And then we also have an episode where they're running around this labyrinthine maze of trying to escape from Boyish. And those were both shot at Camino Real High School in Woodland Hills, I believe. And it was just cool because we happen to know a fan who stepped up. And that's the kind of really incredible thing about this. The production itself was made possible because fans stepped up and offered to help us with things.
Fans are incredible for this. I don't know how, I don't know what all of your familiarity is with Inspector Spacetime or with the web series, but if you're not really super familiar with it, Google it. You can find a 50-year history of this fake show from Community that fans have created. They decided on different actors who played him over the years. They decided on different associates that have been with him over the years. Different storylines, different villains. It's amazing, and it's.
But the costume was made by a fan who does costume design, and she contacted me and said, I'd love to help with this show, and I said yes, we need a new costume design, and we had a very specific image based on what the fans had created for the backstory for the inspector. We worked from that to create the look of the characters. And this guy, his name is Matt Ryan. He came off of the set of Star Trek II as their camera operator to be our director of photography. I mean, stuff like that was happening, and because they just cared about helping, and all the cast and crew was there voluntarily. Nobody got paid, and it was just very cool to do that.
Yeah, the money that we raised on Kickstarter was all equipment.
It all went to rentals, and getting the booth, for example, was an interesting thing about planning ahead. I had never done a production of this scale before, so even $25,000 minus Kickstarter takes 10%, and then we saved some for perks. So we had about $21,500 to spend, and the booth cost us about $2,000. I wasn't expecting that. I had planned probably about $400, but because we had to rent it from a rental company, we had to transport it upright, which means we had to have a truck that was at least that high in its back opening, which only is true for cube trucks. So that cost $100 a day, and then we had to have insurance, which cost us $1,000, which we didn't plan on having. So the little things like that come up, and it was a great experience for producing, because most of what I've produced is very low budget kind of comedy stuff. Anybody else produce content? Any of you guys?
Yeah.
So I mean, you have experience. You go from project to project and learn something every single time you're doing something. So when we first launched our first web series, Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, we shot on actually that camera that's over on the tripod, that teeny little thing, and we put it. We had a microphone on it, so we had decent audio, and then we grew from there until now we have this cool little, that's an actual camera. That's a cool looking thing.
What kind of camera is it? Is that a Red or?
No, we used an FS100 from SONY, ironically. We tried to tape over all the symbols, all the things, so when people were taking pictures on set, we wouldn't get the logo. That's cool. I love that picture. But not only the costume, but the optic pocket knife, which you saw in the opening credit, which I have actually, and when we go over and we'll do some signing, I'll bring it and you can actually play with it. It's a working, very cool prop. Have any of you had the experience where you go to a Star Trek exhibit and you get a look at the props that they use in the show, and you're like, really? That's what a tricorder is? Nah. This prop is the coolest prop I've ever seen, and it's a working thing with a laser. Here's a good picture of it. It's got a screen that lights up, that pops up down there, and it has a laser on the end, so he can scan doors and shoot circuit chaps. And
We highlighted it in, I believe it's episode 4 or 5 of the behind the scenes.
yeah, the behind the scenes are actually really cool for this. I should thank Chaz for producing those. He basically had 2 guys taking pictures and video the entire 4 days, and we put all those into videos. That's one of our stills. Cop in a field. No, he's protecting her. So, any other questions? Anything?
Any gay characters? I mean, I just watched last night.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing because I want to be very sensitive to, because I'm gay and I like to, we have a series called Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, which is our sitcom, and then I have another show called Two Hot Guys in the Shower, where it's basically me, so I'm out on that show. Well, one of me is. If you've ever seen Two Hot Guys in the Shower, it's basically me and me in the shower giving advice to we answer actual viewer questions. And so there was a thing once where other me comes out and says he's not gay when I come out, and it's like, so now it's a thing. Anyway, but yeah, other than the relationship between the inspector and Boyish, which is it's very kind of doctor and master, they go back a long way and they have this kind of love-hate relationship. It's not necessarily physical or gay in our sense, but we've
So they're
definitely.
not exes?
Pardon?
They're not exes?
No, we don't know. We don't know yet. That would be very interesting. The cool thing about the inspector is that he has no heart, and it's one thing that the fans did. And at first blush, it seems like it's a clear opposite of the Doctor's two hearts, right? Because it does accomplish that storytelling thing about if he gets shot in the heart, the Doctor can get shot and still live because he's got two, or something like that. So it solves that story problem, but also the inspector needs his associates. They are his heart, by extension. They represent his compassion. Like, he's kind of this universe police, and they represent his compassion and his humanity. Literally. So it's very cool. And fans did that. Fans invented that part of him, which we embraced and love that.
We tried to be careful about not having it be like a direct one-to-one comparison between stuff in Untitled Web Series and stuff from Doctor Who, but stuff like that. Like if there's a reason, if there's like a logic behind it. Like for instance, one of the things that Travis likes talking about is that the booth, and I think one of the fans came up with the idea that it's smaller on the inside, but the idea of that is that there's always room for one more. So like no matter how many people are in there, it's always a little bit too snug for comfort. But the reason for that is that it
Well, wait, pause for a second. It's because the first thing that happened was that fans said it's smaller on the inside, and that's the obvious choice, right? That's the obvious Doctor Who opposite. But then they changed it so that it's not necessarily smaller on the inside. It actually has an infinite amount of space on the inside. You can fit an infinite number of people, but it is always slightly too small for however many people are inside. And the reason that they came up with
is that then promotes like a closeness, a bond with anybody who is traveling in the booth at any given time, because you're always physically close to each other, and out of that comes a more emotional
comes a close
closeness.
friendship.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Fans did that, and so we love that. And but we invented that. Eric and I sat down before Inspector Spacetime ever hit the air on Community, because we wanted to write this ahead of time. So we sat down and kind of invented a lot of the world of the Inspector. So Infinity Knights being his race they're kind of this universe police. The optic pocket knife being his weapon of choice, stuff like that. Tools, yeah, exactly.
Do you ever find yourself kind of pigeonholed by all that? I don't know if there's a Wikipedia or all that fan lore?
No, I think one of the great things about it is that there is such a long history there that you don't have to try too hard to necessarily justify contradictions.
Okay.
But also like what the fans have done is incredible, and they know that this is essentially Inspector Spacetime, the web series, but. They also know that we are making this, and that we're making it for them, but that we're the ones ultimately who kind of have the final say. So I don't ever feel a pressure to be like, oh well, I guess that says that there, so this can't be over here. It is what it is, and it can kind of all coexist. So.
But and the
one
fandom.
of the beautiful things about it is that there was no one was monitoring that. No one was saying, well, this is already established, this contradicts that. It was just sort of a community of people's imaginations, and if you said, this one episode aired back in '74 about this, then you were right.
Right.
It was
It's like creative improv.
No one can
Whoever says it
challenge it.
first wins.
Yeah.
But then there is kind of a corrective method, like Wikipedia or something. There's this corrective function of the community, and they've always said, everything is in Inspector Spacetime. Everything is canon, and nothing is canon, and that gives us gives everybody a lot of freedom.
What's
to create.
also kind of cool is that the fans themselves will kind of defend those contradictions and justify them. Like if let's say something that we did in season 1 contradicted something that somebody else had said. Like if someone was like, oh, how could Boyish be on second New Older 7? We all know that he died in that fiery inferno, 2,700 years ago. Somebody else can be like, yeah, but I think you're forgetting. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because everything is as if it all existed, so it's great. I want to talk a little bit about Eric's work. I want to ask, I'm going to moderate a little bit. What is it like working with me?
Travis is great and wonderful in every way.
No, because I know that I'm difficult to work
Yeah,
with.
so okay, the thing with Travis is Travis likes things to be good, and Travis likes things to be right as he sees them. But what's cool about that is that he doesn't always necessarily know what right looks like to him. So sometimes you can show him what you're going for, and even if it kind of counters a vague idea that he had, he'll see the good in it, and will run with it. And that's a wonderful thing for a writer, because what'll usually happen is that we'll sit down and we'll talk, and we'll talk about ideas, and we'll talk about possible storylines, but we won't really hammer things down and get things solidly figured out. And then I'll go home and kind of stop contact with Travis for a week or so while I'm writing, while I'm kind of just in that zone. And then after that week or so, I'll send a thing to Travis, and what I've done is taken the ideas that we've talked about when we were together, and also just kind of let that go through whatever process it needs to go through in my head, and then what'll come out on the page sometimes will be very close to the things that we were talking about. Sometimes will kind of bear a slight resemblance. Sometimes will be completely different. And then I'll send that to Travis, and from there, usually it's good enough that Travis is like, yes, this is kind of the basis of what we're going to now be working with. And when that happens,
Almost always, that's the
almost
case.
always. There have been one or two isolated incidents where that was not the case. But usually that's the case, and then we'll take that version of the script, and then we'll actually get together again, and from that we'll tweak things, and we'll make things pop, and we'll make things a little bit sharper, and fine tune things, and that's basically what it is. And luckily Travis and I have a similar enough sensibility that's but it works well for us that way. So
Eric writes a lot very well. So, well, by which I mean, I called him on the way home from set for my first day of filming Inspector Spacetime back in July of last year. And I called him and said, we need to write a web series. Here's what I know. And he mentioned being out of contact. He's actually usually very good about returning phone calls, text messages, whatever. He then, after I called him, didn't return my calls for 5 days. And I got very frustrated by that because to me this was very important. I said we need to work on this, and he's like after 5 days I called him and left kind of an angry message, like what the hell, man? Why won't you call me back? And and I think he did call me back and said check your email. And
Well, actually, I called him back and was like, well, I was gonna send you this thing tomorrow after
Oh.
I had a final look at it, but now I guess I'm gonna have to send you kind of a crappy copy. You're welcome.
so what he sent me was 5 episodes of the show. So basically episodes 2 through 6 written out. And that was what we ended up shooting for. I mean, basically. And so when I get stuff from Eric, then it's like ore. It's like gold that you pull out of a mountain, and then we polish. We chip away at the rest. We pull out the best stuff. We polish it until it's shiny. And I love working with Eric, and I love. He mentioned showing me new things, and I love that he does that, because
Travis had some particular ideas about sort of the Whovian ideas that he wanted to parody, and I think that I had different ideas, and they weren't necessarily in conflict with one another, but they were definitely different.
Do you have any examples?
Well, like I remember Travis was like, okay, well, we definitely have to talk about how we're going to all these different planets, but like every single one looks exactly like Earth, and we have to he had kind of those ideas in mind. Whereas I was like, well, okay, first of all, we have to have an episode where they run a lot. Like that's a very and so we in fact have an entire, I call it the flequence because it is a fleeing sequence, and so that was important to me, and the fact that the Doctor is kind of douchey because he knows that he's smarter than everyone else in the room, and like even though he's kind and he's good, that kind of knowledge just makes him seem, to me, a little bit grander than everyone else. And so I definitely wanted to have, and I know that Travis can do douche very well, so I wanted to have sort of a douchey quality. So things like that, where we both had some ideas about what to tackle, and they just came together to something pretty amazing.
So that's a spleen. So that's episode 5. It is mainly just us spleening, although there's funny stuff in it. Let's move down the line a little bit to we're running short on time. Brian, I'm amazed by Brian. First of all, I feel like I am so lucky to have someone like him working on my projects, because I will tell him that I need a piece of music, and he'll just do it, and it sounds amazing. In fact, do I have the entire? I want to just for a second play you the Inspector Spacetime. So again, that very last note you hear in Community, and he worked backwards from that. And fans had created the truth that the Inspector Spacetime score was very orchestral, not at all electronic. And
so it was a lot of fans. I wasn't the first. I will say there were many other very gifted musicians who had created their own theme songs. They were all very digital, electronic, techno sounding, similar to the really old, Delhi Derbyshire versions in the early Doctor Who. And I thought, well, that's a very easy route to go. And then when I heard that it was more orchestral, I well, let's make it a bit more mainstream, but then add little tiny sci-fi motifs throughout so we don't lose that. And so it was very fun to kind of go that alternate route, but at the same time kind of retaining what tiny little chord I already knew existed in the Inspector Spacetime universe from the Community show. So it was a fun kind of formula in that, like Hale and I watched that clip from Community. It was a regular G major chord. I'm like, all right, we'll end it with that. It's a nice way to resolve, the melody. But the regular Doctor Who theme is in a minor key. So okay, well then we'll just change that and make this in G minor, and then we'll conclude it in G major and resolve it the way it is on the show.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
So that was kind of my I guess blueprint in a way for kind of constructing that, but then not betraying anything that had already been established by either Community or the fan base.
So I'll give you an example of what and he did all the music. So if you watch it, one night I said I need a music for this British television ident, and so I gave him the video, and he matched up the little bing, bing, bing. And so I said, I'll call him, I need a short intro for a short opening title sequence. He'll give me that. This is the latest thing he sent me. In putting together the full-length version, I wanted to extend the credits because each episode has its individual credits, but the credits for the whole thing was longer, so I needed something about 10 seconds longer. And I said, just give me, I need about 10 seconds longer on the post-credits, on the end credits. And I figured that he would just take a couple of bits and loop them. This is the end of what he sent me, so it's the whole same thing, and then this. Sorry. Okay. So, I'm going to ask you the same question, Brian. What's it like working with me?
No, it's great. I mean, Travis and I have a dynamic as such where we trust each other's judgment. I guess I'm perhaps fortunately or rather unfortunately, he doesn't, I guess, possess the same level of musical understanding. So it's great when he says, you take care of this and I'll listen to it when it's done, as opposed to, the two of you know a lot about writing, so there's a lot of very similar kind of going along the same path. But with me, it's like, okay, let me do what I need to do, and here it is, and then we'll tweak things, bring this instrument down, get rid of this, and it's very easy when I trust his judgment, he trusts my artistic vision with the capacity that I'm involved, and so it's fortunate to sort of have that level of trust and that level of respect for artists collaborating. Which is difficult in a community of artists who all have their own, kind of too many cooks in the kitchen kind of a syndrome, and it's hard to kind of get all of that, gelling together. So it's a very remarkable thing when that can happen.
And I'll ask you guys, if you go and watch the rest of the series, to pay attention to the music, because it is a character in the show, and actually a lot of the comedy, adding the music in created more comedy, which I found to be absolutely incredible. There were laughs. Like I would edit the whole thing, and I'd seen it 100 times editing this thing together, and then I'll listen to Brian's score, and I'll laugh at fresh stuff that wasn't funny before, just because his score punctuates some joke or other. So that was really remarkable. I'll move down to Chaz. Chaz, I love his story because I just love the idea that he knew me before, just watching my videos when he was in Wisconsin or Chicago.
I went to school in Wisconsin.
Right, okay, you went to Marquette, right? But
yeah.
You were coming from Chicago. Okay, so I got that right. And then he came out here and wanted to be involved, and now is a very integral part of our productions. So talk a little bit about working on maybe just the web series and then your role as a behind-the-scenes producer.
Well, it was really interesting. I mean, I learned a lot, especially first and foremost, make sure your second unit has a good microphone. There was a few lost moments just from wind quality, and then a lot of jokes that I wanted to put into the behind the scenes that just couldn't make it because you couldn't understand it, and it was just like, at least there were sight gags to them. So because working with Carrie and Travis, they produced comedy just standing next to each other. It was really easy for me to take the footage and just kind of pick away the not good stuff, because there was just so much that the two of them, and then when Eric became more in the scenes, day 2 and 3, or 3 and 4 rather, like they're so great on set. And then when it came down to editing, Travis, as Eric has pointed out, Travis is very particular about his vision of good, and I found that kind of carrying over to how I would look at things while I was editing, because after like working with him for so long, like when I'm sitting and editing, like I'm thinking not only do I think this look is good, but it's like, what will Travis think of this when I send it to him? And I can usually predict the answer well enough to where it'll get like halfway there, so I can kind of like fudge it a little way either way if I have to. But it was a great experience to see it from the beginning to the end, because I remember like hearing the story of the script getting written when Travis first got off the set, and then just to see that last year at Galley, we announced it, and then just to see the process has been so overwhelming and amazing. From just an idea to what we have on screen and you guys here, it's just really cool.
I have to say, I am extraordinarily lucky to I feel like my biggest skill is finding people who are better at things than I am. Each of these guys is better at what they do than I am. Eric's a better writer. Brian is better at music, and Chaz is a better producer and editor. And so it's wonderful for me to, because I realized just listening to it, kind of the first night it really clicked. We all work the same way. Like we all, we'll get ore and we'll get the raw material and then we'll polish together. And I enjoy working that way so much. But I guess if you think it's the only way that it would be possible to do so many different aspects of a production, because those of you who've tried to do things, and I've done it myself, where you do everything yourself, and it's maddening. And there's no way that this would have come off without being able to do, without having people who care very much about it. So, we got 5 minutes left.
So what are your guys' knowledge and experience with Inspector Spacetime, with the web series? I know that you're wearing an Inspector shirt. So
Yeah, just for today.
that's awesome. I mean, did you guys find it through Community? Do you know about the web series? Do you know Travis's other stuff on his channel? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
Excellent. Robot engineering. I always find that fascinating when people, even RNGG got, I think, 750,000 views or something like that so far. And we've started to get more because I think YouTube likes longer content, and so the episodes are like 6 to 8 minutes long. But it's weird that we're finding, I almost feel surprised when people find me because of that, because it's one of my favorite things. We love RNGG so much, and Brian actually played Ninja on RNGG. You don't know because of the mask. And yeah. So, but thank you. That's awesome. Any other?
Do I have any questions?
Any?
Yeah.
What's next for the inspector?
Well, we
I'll talk.
We've already written season 2. We're on the third and a half draft. So we've got third drafts that are on the way to being fourth drafts. We already have all the characters, almost all the characters in place, all the action. So we've gotten a budget. The thing is, we learned a lot from doing this, and so one of the things that we want to do very much is to be able to have the ability to pay cast and crew something. What that does for you on a production is it gives you a level of assurance that people are going to be, you're going to get professional people, professional work out of them. And one of our major issues, for example, was we lost our sound guy the day before we shot. And so we had major sound issues that we had to fix in post, and that is absolutely not the way you want to go if you can avoid it. So the second season also about twice as long as this one. This one is about the length of a sitcom when you put it all together. The second season will be the length of a 1 hour TV show. And so we're looking at a budget that's probably closer to 115,000 for that. So raising that requires us to find new ways to, because I don't want to burden the fans with all of that unless they get something really awesome. And the script is good, but we'd love to get some people attached to it. Some Doctor Who people or some other people that will bring more viewers to the show. So that's where we are right now. It's written. We're kind of exploring the casting of it and the production of it, and also still promoting season 1 because it's fresh. It just came out last month, so we've still got legs on that, I think. So we've got time for one more question. Who wants it?
Good question.
All right, that was awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming.